as commander-in-chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded.
So in a sane society, that would be a disqualifying
territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence
because I'm all about territorial integrity.
Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
I think the Ukraine question was something that really struck me. To me, that was the most interesting for like people like us. That was the most interesting part of it, because her answer on that was just absolutely monstrous and psychotic and just like apocalyptic and so incredibly bleak. But unfortunately, and this is why I say things like, here, I'll throw this up on the screen here. I used your "fuck this country" line in a friend family text that nobody responded to. This is why I feel that way, because unfortunately,
that wasn't the way to win friends and influence people.
Unfortunately, the way she framed Ukraine does appeal to that tiny slice of moderate voters who could tip elections. Now, don't get me wrong. In this case, I don't think it will. Foreign policy is nowhere near people's list of priorities this year, which is horrible, obviously, as it pertains to both Ukraine and Israel, Gaza, obviously. But the reality is I don't think that's going to swing that many votes. But you could just see the way she phrases things. You're a friend to dictators. We don't back down from a fight. Yeah, if you win, the war will end because you'll surrender. The fact that that is not a disqualifyingly psychotic thing to say. You are going to bring peace, and that's bad. I'll keep this unwinnable war going till the bitter end, till the last Ukrainian man is run through this meat grinder. That is just an absolutely monstrous answer, but it does not play that way to people who decide elections. And that's one of the reasons why the country is as fucked as it is, because there is just not an understanding of what these issues actually mean. There's not an understanding amongst the kinds of normie, nice moderates who swing elections that NATO instigated this war and that this is setting the world on the road to ruin, and that the only way to change that is a complete revolution of consciousness, frankly. A complete divorcing from this just like broad assumption that the United States is not the aggressor party. And what Donald Trump said, he tries coming back. You know, she's such a weak negotiator. They sent her there to negotiate, and a few days later, the war started. I don't know what exactly, if he got the timeline right. It could be, though. They didn't send her there to negotiate. They sent her there to instigate the war. They sent her there to instigate. They sent her there to egg Zelensky on. That's why they sent her there. Now, he can't say that because it's off brand for him, because he has to be the negotiator and she's the weakling, right? So the way he phrased that was not factual.
Yeah, they got one look at her and they invaded you.
Right, exactly. That's the way he wants to say, she tried to stop it, but she's too weak. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. That's the way he phrased it because it's more on brand for his campaign. Right. And frankly, he is an American chauvinist too, as much as he is a cog in the war machine to a small extent, I guess. He's an inconvenience to them. He, at the end of the day, he toes the party line. He fits very well within the overall narrative that we are generally good and all these other countries are generally
bad. Yeah.
But, even his response was too blue-pilled to really be honest. And that's what's really terrifying, where you have a debate about a very seriously potentially nuclear exchange, apocalyptic conflict, just so detached from reality and so blind to the consequences of how detached from reality that conversation was. That back and forth was really, exhibit A for why we are as fucked as we are.
Yeah, it was detached from reality on her side, not really from his. He's the one saying they have nuclear weapons, something they never talk about.
Yeah. I'm just saying
on the other
framing,
side. He addressed how dangerous this is, which is something they never do. They want to go out there. This is what I mean. They're like the Bush Republican Party. They go out there and they talk about America and our freedoms and defending democracy. And here's Trump. This could be a war like you've never seen. They have nuclear weapons. They don't want to talk about it. He's right. He's right. And it's what's really insane is that it takes Donald Trump to tell you that you want to talk about an insane narrative that they just are massaging the public with this flag waving bullshit. And I laughed when she started talking about defending democracy. We're supporting a fascist apartheid ethno-state in the process of committing a genocide on social media. And you're talking about defending democracy. And the fact that he's talking about the death toll over there, which is something else they never really talk about except when it's to their advantage. So, yeah, no, I mean, he definitely had the better answer on that. He has the better answers on matters of war and peace generally, arguing you were going to bring the Taliban to Camp David. Why not? Who do you negotiate peace with? Your friends?
Your friends, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who do you bring to a place where you're supposed to negotiate peace?
Right.
Like what? Oh, you were gonna bring them to Camp David. This is what I'm saying. It's this very traditional, jingoistic, Reagan-esque kind of language. Oh, our sacred places, our sacred institutions. God bless America.
Oh yeah.
And Trump. Is why I say, a lot of his answers were good for people who are inclined to like what he has to say. The suburban normies, they're lost to Trump. They're never voting for Trump either way. Kamala helped herself by not having a meltdown, by not doing a word salad. Trump was Trump, man. I mean, you like that. You like that he's offering some words of opposition to the WEF, Davos Global Transnational Elite Consensus. If that's the language you speak, he spoke it. And I thought he spoke it articulately and clearly. We know Trump can just go off script and start talking about sharks and toilet plungers and whatever. He didn't do that. He was clear. He was concise. He really didn't ramble. Did he convince anyone? Probably not, but neither did she.
His presentation wasn't as good as hers. She definitely outperformed him. Like I said,
I think it depends on what you like. Depends on what you
people
like.
Who like Trump. I mean, if you like, it depends on who.
But same thing with her. Like if you like that whole we're courting World War III, but hey, fuck, we're America and democracy. If you like that, then you'd like that. If you are keyed into not liking that, then those answers made you sick, man.
Yeah, but
again, I don't think it's a good look to be like mockingly looking at the guy while he's talking about inflation. I think those are things that there are a lot of voters who pick up on moments like that, and the media is not going to talk about it. They're not going to frame that. They're not going to have a headline. Kamala smiles as Trump talks about inflation. They're not going to, because they have that bias, but a lot of people do see that. That's how he became president the first time.
yeah, I think the normies I think is a cohort of normie moderate suburbanites who are available to Trump this time because of inflation, because of, just the overall state of the country. That's what put a lot of those states back in play. And I think she made successful appeals to them where he did not. Now, if he can circumvent that, he can win. If the electorate looks like a more traditional one, then I think she helped herself perhaps more than we think. It's very difficult to predict. I mean, you're talking about guesswork because you're talking about such a tiny cohort of people. Now, the only reason that matters at all, the only reason it's worth contemplating, predicting, is because the race is close enough to the point where that small a number of people could make the difference. But I thought Kamala's game plan was to come in, make as strong a pitch as possible to that very tiny cohort of moderates. I thought she executed that well. Trump, I thought he started out good. I think he was thrown off his game a little bit, and I don't think his execution was as sharp as hers throughout most of it. What difference it will make? Really unknowable at this point, I think. I think it's unknowable at this point because you're talking about a very small, you're talking about such a small shift that could make a big difference, and you're talking about such a small number of people, who may or may not have been compelled to either change their mind or decide to vote or not to vote. It's really tough to say. Really tough to say.
You're right that it depends a lot, even more than normal, on what the electorate looks like.
Yes.
Who actually shows up to vote. That's decisive. But hey, in terms of Trump's presidential debate performances, he was better here than he was with Hillary. His performances with Hillary were not good. That was where he was doing the weird walking behind her, and like his performances in those debates were much weaker than this was, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, overall, he's definitely improved since then. And I don't think he blew it. But I just thought, she had a bar to clear this time, and he didn't. So that gives her a big optical advantage too. She had a bar to clear, and now the narrative, I mean, I can guarantee you the narrative is going to be she passed with flying colors. She's ready for prime time.
Again, anything less than dropping a deuce on stage, you would have gotten that coverage.
Please clap.